Hello, my dear friends. How are you doing? Hope you are having an amazing day and not having to deal with drama. Ready for new stories I have for you today? Let's go to the first one. And don't forget to listen to the end of the story, guys, to hear my insights. Enjoy the stories. And don't forget to like and subscribe. And of course, don't forget to leave a comment. I'm 29, the oldest of two daughters. My younger sister, Chloe, is 27. She's been the golden child since the day she was born. Growing up, I had curfews, strict rules, chores, and expectations. Chloe, she was the free-spirited one, which in reality meant we'll excuse anything she does. She got away with skipping homework, staying out late, mouthing off to our parents, and never facing consequences. I was responsible. Translation: we'll put the weight of the family on you while we protect her from any fallout. Despite the imbalance, I still believed we had that basic sibling loyalty. The kind where you can argue and still have each other's backs when it really matters. I couldn't have been more wrong. Last year I was engaged to Mark, my partner of 4 years. We'd been planning our wedding for over a year. Venue booked, catering sorted, dress hanging in the spare room, invitations sent out. It was 3 weeks before the wedding when I got a message from someone I didn't expect. Chloe's friend, Hannah. Hannah asked if I could meet her for coffee because she needed to tell me something important. I thought maybe it was about planning Chloe's birthday or something minor. But when I got there, Hannah looked uncomfortable. She hesitated before saying, "I can't keep this to myself anymore. You deserve to know." Then she told me point blank, "Your sister is sleeping with your fiancé." I felt like my ears were ringing. I asked her if she was sure, and that's when she pulled out her phone. She showed me messages Chloe had sent her, not just gossip, but explicit details. Chloe had been bragging about what she and Mark had been doing, where they'd met up, even laughing about how naive I was. There were photos too, ones I didn't want to see but couldn't look away from. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It wasn't a one-time drunken mistake. Chloe had been carrying on an affair with my fiancé for months, while standing next to me in bridal shops pretending to be excited for my wedding. I went home in a haze. When I confronted Mark, he had the audacity to say it just happened and didn't mean anything. Chloe claimed she'd been drunk and wasn't thinking clearly, but the messages Hannah showed me proved otherwise. They planned their meetings in advance. She wasn't sorry for what she did. She was sorry she'd been exposed. I canceled the wedding immediately. It was humiliating to call vendors and tell friends the event was off, but I refused to marry a man who could betray me like that. And as for Chloe, I went no contact that day. No screaming match, no dramatic fight, just total removal from my life. My parents' reaction: "People make mistakes. You can't throw away family over a man. Your sister's young. She doesn't think things through." They wanted me to forgive her for the sake of family unity. I refused. Fast forward about 6 months. I ran into Ethan at a mutual friend's party. Ethan and I had gone to high school together. We'd always been friendly, but never especially close. But Chloe had been obsessed with him back in school. And I mean obsessed. She called him the love of my life to anyone who would listen. She'd write his name in notebooks, stalk his social media, and once even made Mom drive her to the football field just so she could casually see him after practice. She'd concoct elaborate stories about their future together. The reality: Ethan was never interested. He was polite when they crossed paths, but that was it. He never flirted with her, never dated her, and once even told a friend she was a bit intense and not really his type. He moved on, graduated, and left for work in another city. Chloe clung to the fantasy for years, still referring to him as my future husband in a half-joking, half-dead serious way. At that party, Ethan and I started talking. Hours passed like minutes. There was no awkwardness, no games, just easy, natural conversation. We started seeing each other. He knew what Chloe had done with Mark and was nothing but supportive. A year later, we're engaged. Ethan proposed a couple of months ago, and I said yes without a second thought. He's not a rebound. He's not a plot for revenge. He's the person who makes me feel safe and loved in a way I didn't think was possible after Mark. When my parents found out, the reaction wasn't joy. My mom called furious, "How could you do this to your sister?" You know how she's always felt about him. I reminded her that Chloe's feelings don't give her ownership over a man who never wanted her, and that Chloe slept with my fiancé. My mom dismissed it as different because that was a mistake, but my relationship with Ethan was deliberate. My dad accused me of destroying your sister's life and claimed Chloe's mental health is suffering because of my engagement. They say my wedding will send her over the edge and that I'm marrying Ethan out of spite. I asked them where this concern for mental health was when I was crying on the floor, humiliated, with a canceled wedding because Chloe couldn't keep her hands off my fiancé. Silence. They just went back to Chloe's fragile state and how family should look out for each other. Translation: protect Chloe at all costs. You can fend for yourself. Now they've told me they won't be attending my wedding. Not because they dislike Ethan, they actually like him, but because your sister will need emotional support that day. They've chosen to spend my wedding day babysitting the feelings of the daughter who detonated my last one. It's like they've rewritten history. In their version, Chloe's the tragic victim, and I'm the villain for daring to be happy. My friends think my parents are enabling her, and that Chloe's depression is just her inability to control the narrative. They tell me I should marry Ethan, enjoy my life, and let my parents sit in the mess they've made. And that's exactly what I'm going to do. But part of me still wonders, could I have avoided all of this if I'd fallen for literally anyone else? Maybe. But I can't help who I love. And after what Chloe did, I'll be damned if I let her ego dictate my life. So, Reddit, am I the a-hole for marrying the man my sister has been obsessed with since high school? Even though she slept with my fiancé just a year ago? Not the o-hole. OP's sister didn't just make a mistake. She committed one of the worst betrayals you can inflict on a sibling. She blew up OP's life 3 weeks before her wedding, laughed about it to her friends, and felt zero remorse. Now that OP has found happiness with someone who actually treats OP with respect, suddenly she's the victim? Number OP's parents are enabling her to live in a fantasy world where her feelings matter more than OP's right to be happy. She doesn't own Ethan. He's a human being who chose OP because she is the person he loves, and if that's breaking her, that's her problem to fix with a therapist. Not OP's responsibility to fix by sacrificing her future. And now let's hear community's opinion. I cannot believe your parents have the audacity to accuse you of spite when your sister slept with your fiancé and bragged about it. That's not just a betrayal. That's calculated cruelty. Now they're rewarding her by refusing to come to your wedding, all because she's sulking over a man who never even looked twice at her. They're treating her high school crush like some eternal claim to property, and treating you like you're the one who's wrong for moving on. They're not protecting her mental health. They're protecting her entitlement. Stand your ground and marry Ethan. Your parents have already shown you where their loyalty lies, and it's not with you. Your parents' logic is wild. Sleeping with your sister's fiancé. Wait, people make mistakes. Marrying a man your sister once had an unrequited crush on over a decade ago. Destroying her life. What? Chloe's mental health issues sound a lot like the result of not getting her way for the first time in her life. And if your parents are willing to skip your wedding to sit at home with the person who wrecked your last one, they've made their priorities clear. Let them stay home. They don't deserve front row seats to your happiness if they can't even acknowledge the damage their golden child caused. Not the a-hole. This isn't about Ethan. It's about control. Your sister controlled the narrative when she took your fiancé. She thought she'd destroyed your happiness. Now you've taken that power back, and she can't handle it. Your parents are playing into her victim act because it's easier to coddle her than to hold her accountable. Honestly, their absence from your wedding might be a blessing. You won't have to worry about side-eye from people who clearly think your happiness is less important than your sister's imaginary claim on a man she never dated. Build your life with Ethan and surround yourself with people who actually support you.
I'm a new mom, and I live with my partner in the UK. I am Middle Eastern, and he is white. My parents live in my home country. We can't currently afford a trip for them. This is relevant to the story. As expected, it has been absolutely hectic being a new mom. The first day we returned home from the hospital, everybody from his side of the family visited. When I asked why nobody warned me as I was unprepared, tired, and unequipped to handle guests, my in-laws told me this was normal in their culture. I ended up cooking and baking and serving all the guests, while also taking care of baby, and then cleaning up after they left. And I thought that was that. But now it's been 3 months, and family still comes over every other week, and they sit and eat and hang out in our living room for hours, while I have to serve them and then go home. Other than that, nobody calls or visits, and they don't help out with anything. Yesterday evening, my husband told me, once again, that his mother and her sisters would be coming over, once again, because one of them still hasn't seen the baby. Shocker. And what I should prepare, and how I should try to dress more conservatively, as I've gained quite a bit of weight. About 10 pounds. Something snapped, and I told him if they come, I'm not letting them in, because they eat our food, mess up our home, and order me around like a maid while I am already tired as I care for the house and baby by myself. But they don't even help with either of those things. They treat our home as a lounge with a private butler. Well, apparently my husband told his parents about my childish outburst, and they're mad, and calling me an a-hole for barring them from their own grandchild, and kicking them out of the home they bought their son. Am I the a-hole? What the actual duck? As a new mother, your in-laws should be doing the cooking and cleaning for you, not the other way around. What the duck is wrong with them? You should be resting and recuperating from childbirth. They're terrible people. Not the a-hole, but your husband and in-laws are, big time. Not the a-hole, but you need boundaries. From now on, simply stop waiting on them when they come over. Just stop. You control your actions, nobody else. What are you so afraid of? That they'll criticize you? They already do that. Next time your husband tells you his mom is coming over, you should plan a yoga class or see friends. Your husband can host and take care of the baby. Not the a-hole. The control, the comments on your weight, etc. It's aggression. You're not a ducking Stepford wife. Tell your man it stops, or you're done, because I promise it will get worse. He thinks you're locked in, away from your family, new baby, hormones, confidence issues, that he's preying on making comments on your weight. So he and his family can do what he wants. If you don't want your life to be like this in a year, you have to make the changes now. My 34 female, brother Jack, 36 male, married my sister-in-law Amy, 27 female, about 2 years ago. One thing you need to know about me and Amy is that we are polar opposites. I'm very much an honest, blunt, tell it like it is type of gal. Amy, on the other hand, is the much more cheery, don't want to hurt anyone's feelings, sensitive type of person. Amy is a preschool teacher and has been for about 2 years. I, on the other hand, am an NICU nurse. I work long hours, often overtime, and have to nurse the tiniest of humans back to health. It's stressful, but I still prefer it to be an ER nurse, which is what I worked as until about 5 years ago. Apparently, me being blunt with my overly sensitive patients was a no-go. I like my job, but it requires every type of skill in the book. On Friday, I was invited to Jack and Amy's house for dinner. After dinner, we decided that we wanted to watch a movie. Jack had told us to pick something out and that he would take a shower and be back in a few minutes, but not to start the movie without him. However, Jack had left the remote on the TV stand instead of giving it to one of us, and both of us were already sitting in separate chairs. And this is where the entire issue started. Amy asked me if I would get the remote. I replied that she was the one that was seated closer to the TV stand. Amy said that her feet hurt. I said mine did too. Amy said that she had been on her feet all day. I said that I was on my feet all day as well. Amy said that she was running around looking after kids. I replied that I had been running around trying to nurse newborn babies back to health. Amy whined and asked me if I could just please get up and get the remote because she had a grueling day. I replied that we both knew that if anyone had a more grueling day, it was me. Amy reinstated that we both have hard jobs. I said to Amy that when it comes to the difficulty of both our careers, educating kids and healing kids are on much different levels, and that I could do her job, but she wouldn't be able to last a day in my shoes. Amy became defensive and upset and asked me if I was trying to insult her. I said no, but rather I was just stating the obvious. Plus, she was the one who wanted to compare who had a harder day in the first place. Amy told me to forget about the movie and told me that I should leave. I tried to get her to change her mind, but she wasn't having it. Jack walked in as we were arguing, and seeing how upset Amy was in this situation, he agreed I should leave. Now Amy hasn't been answering my calls. I was able to get a hold of Jack, and he called me an insensitive a-hole for hurting Amy, insulting her intelligence, and downplaying the difficulty of her job. I tried to explain myself, but he hung up on me. Am I the a-hole? I just gave her a hard truth about the reality of the differences between her job and mine. But maybe I could have been nicer about it. You couldn't cut it as an ER nurse, so you had to transfer somewhere that the patients cannot understand their nurse is an a-hole. You sound like you aren't that good at being a nurse, so let's start there. Yes, the a-hole. Yes, the a-hole. Honestly, I probably didn't have to read beyond "I'm very much an honest, blunt, tell it like it is" type of gal to get that decision. Because people who say that are always an a-hole at the end of the day. I lean towards everyone sucks here, because you two are fighting over a remote control. Ironic since you both work with children that you are acting like children. But Amy acknowledged you both have hard jobs in different ways. You dismissed her completely. And to be honest, given your personality alone, I don't think you could handle being a preschool teacher, running around and wrangling dozens of children. Also, if your patients have an issue with your personality, and your brother has an issue with your personality, and Amy has an issue with your personality, the common denominator there is you. You're the problem, not an overly sensitive sister-in-law or patients. And please don't take offense, just being an honest, blunt, tell it like it is type of guy. Yes, the a-hole. Every time I hear someone say, "I'm brutally honest," I know that they are just mean. You have already had career repercussions for your a-holery. Excuse me, bluntness. Yet you don't see that's an issue. I have a high-paying executive-level job, and guess what? I wouldn't last 2 days in a preschool. Different jobs have different skill sets. It doesn't make one job better or worse, or more or less important. My 30 female, husband's 30 male. Father died when he was young, and his mother died a few years back, leaving the house, not paid off, to next of kin, which divided it between his two siblings, female 26, male 27. When she passed, I was still in school. My husband brought up the idea a few months after she passed, that we remodel the house when we had the money, and make that our home for life. I agreed, and the siblings were fine with it. My husband had been paying the mortgage a few years before his mother passed, and never making his siblings pay a dime. Even after I moved in, I never made them pay since we wanted them to be able to get on their feet, go through school, get adult jobs, and not feel burdened by money since my husband and I were planning on staying there long-term anyways, and we could afford it without them. When I graduated, I worked a lot and picked up a lot of OT to pay my loans back in a year to be debt-free. We both saved up to pay for our wedding. After, I picked up a lot of OT to stash for our remodel, as well as pay down the mortgage. The mortgage is finally almost paid off completely. The siblings are talking about moving out, and my husband and I are talking about trying for a baby. My husband then brought up how we were going to pay his siblings their share of the house, about $40K each, since it was left to all three of them. I told him I hadn't thought about it, and if we could pick up the conversation at a later date. I'm just so upset because I've been working so hard to be debt-free and save for our potential child or children and retirement and maybe a vacation home in the future. And now I'm thinking about shelling out another $80K when we never made them pay one dime for anything. Makes me want to cry. So am I the a-hole for not wanting to pay them? Yes, the a-hole. Your husband should have refinanced the mortgage into his own name and paid out his siblings, i.e. bought the house, if the plan from the beginning was for it to be your house. You've known this whole time that the house ownership was split. Never ever put money into a home that you don't have full ownership of, without there being a clear and written plan for how that investment and any resulting equity will be handled. You need a lawyer to sort this out. You kicked the can down the road for too long on this, and it's your fault if that costs you money. If the house was left to all three siblings equally, he needs to buy out their respective 1/3. The fact that you didn't throw them out of their childhood home immediately following the loss of their mother, during an economic collapse and a housing crisis, doesn't make you Mother Teresa. Edit. I agree, I am the a-hole in the situation for what I want, and I know I am an idiot. Was just feeling down on the situation I got myself into. Prior conversations did happen. Legal things were just tough. Husband and I did the math, and they have saved more money not splitting the mortgage than they would have inherited had I not been in the picture at all. Say if I never moved in, never met, etc. I know that probably still doesn't seem right in your eyes since it's theirs, but they have now about $5K more than what they would have gotten if they were splitting mortgage payments. We were still currently working things out and arranging things because regardless how I feel, I still know it's the right thing to do. No one is mad at anyone, and no one has ill feelings. Everyone in the party understands certain things were done for certain reasons, so no one feels cheated. And like I said, things were talked about today, and we are coming up with an agreement. My ex-husband and I have been divorced for more than 2 years now. We have a 5-year-old son who I have sole custody of, and he visits his father once a week. A few months ago, I was promoted at my job and got the opportunity to go on a business trip to South Korea. I was reluctant to go because it'd mean I have to be separated from my son for 4 months, but I know it would benefit us in the long run, so I decided to go. My son stayed with his father and his new wife. The truth is, I've held a bit of a grudge against this woman. They were co-workers and knew each other before we got divorced. When our marriage began deteriorating, I had a gut feeling that there was something going on between them, but I didn't have enough evidence to prove it, so I never said anything. But not even 1 month after we divorced, the two of them got together, which proves my suspicions correct. But of course he'd never admit it. When I got back from my business trip, I went to my ex's house to pick up my son and saw him there with the wife. I called out to him, and to my dismay, he didn't come running to me and just continued playing with his stepmom. I had to go over and pick him up before he'd finally acknowledge me. When we were leaving, he fussed around and didn't want to go, staying glued to her side. Clearly they had bonded during the time I was gone, and maybe I'm being petty, but it made me really jealous and upset, like I'd been betrayed. When I finally managed to get him in the car, he poked his head out and said, "Bye, Mommy," which made me shocked. Apparently, she had told him to call her that. Now, when we're at home, he would frequently ask to go to his dad's house outside of the visiting day and said he missed Mommy. I told him I'm his mommy, and he says I'm talking about the other mommy. I was honestly heartbroken. My son had been very attached to me ever since he was born, but now it seems like his attitude has completely changed. I didn't want them to grow closer, and I figured that if he could grow distant with me after not seeing me for a while, he would probably forget about the wife in a couple weeks. I told his dad the next time he came to pick him up not to go to his house if his wife was there. He asked me why, and I said that she was causing a rift between me and my son. He called me crazy and began to leave, but I told him I was serious and that I wouldn't let our son go with him unless he promised. He agreed, but when my son got home, I asked him what he did, and he said he and Mommy and Daddy went to the mall. This seriously irritated me, so I called my ex and asked him why he broke his promise. He said I was acting ridiculous and that I had no right to keep him from his family. Except that I do, and this woman wasn't her parent, so she is not entitled to spend time with him. My former in-laws even called me up and said what I was doing was selfish and petty. Am I the a-hole? The thought of my child calling someone else mommy breaks my heart. I feel for you. However, yes, you are jealous and being petty. You know this. It is wonderful your son has another parental figure in his life that takes care of him and he adores. Your son doesn't know about the possible infidelity, and honestly, it does not matter. What matters is your son. Love is limitless. Love is unconditional. You are being the a-hole. For me, everyone sucks here. OP for the way she's acting, obviously. But I think that the ex and his wife suck because apparently she told the kid to call her mommy, and the father hasn't corrected that. I also think the father sucks for taking care of his child for 4 months straight, and then being okay to go back to seeing him only once a week. Makes me wonder who actually took care of that child for 4 months. I can't believe that the parents thought this would be a good idea to begin with. The title sounds worse than it is, so please hear me out. My 37 male, wife, 37 female, and I have been trying for kids since we got married 4 years ago. I've always wanted to be a father, and I think I'd be good at it, and I know my wife wants kids too. Unfortunately, it hasn't happened despite several rounds of IUIs. We can't afford IVF on our insurance. And the doctor told us at our last appointment that he honestly didn't think the chances were very good. My wife got very depressed and stopped taking care of herself, so her personal hygiene and appearance have gone down the drain. While I love my wife very dearly, and I think she's amazing, I also got depressed at the news and haven't been able to talk to her about it. I also got depressed and in a moment of weakness had an affair with a single friend of mine who came over to support me while my wife was at work. Now, my friend is pregnant with my child, and I'm ecstatic to finally be a father. I want to be responsible and stand by my child and my friend, so I consulted a lawyer and decided to draw up divorce papers so I can be with my child and its mother. The child is going to be born in a couple of weeks, and my wife still hasn't signed the divorce papers. She keeps hoping that I'll come back to her and we can start over. But I don't anticipate that happening and am panicking that my child might be born out of wedlock. My family thinks I'm doing the right thing. They're very traditional and think that it's a woman's duty to have kids, and for a man to stand by a woman who bears his children. But my friends have all abandoned me for my still wife. They think it's an incredibly low move for me to divorce my wife, even though we can't have kids, and I think it's dishonorable to leave a woman who's having my child. I like my friend as well, just so no one thinks I'm only putting up with her for the child's sake. Am I the a-hole for wanting to divorce my wife to be with my friend and my almost born child? Yes, the a-hole. You didn't have a moment of weakness. You cheated on your wife. You got another woman pregnant. Guess what? Doesn't matter if your kid is born out of wedlock. You aren't traditional. Because if you were traditional, the child would never have been conceived out of wedlock, nor would you have cheated on your wife. Fostering, adoption could have been options once the dust settled. Supporting your wife, getting her, yourself therapy, and getting couples therapy would have been the best. But in this post, you blame your wife for your infidelity. Oh, she let herself go, blah blah blah. The tales of a man who can't take the blame for what he did. She was suffering, knowing she was the reason you both couldn't have kids. Also, your wife is worth more than her ability to bear children. She is not an incubator. She is a human with emotions and skills. You clearly don't see that though. Yes, the a-hole, big time. But divorce is definitely the right thing for your wife. She deserves so much better than a man who seems to view women as incubators only. Traditional my butt. If you're so traditional, why not split up and then knock up someone else? You just didn't want to leave a sure thing for something that hadn't yet given the expected results. A baby from the affair. Once it did, all pretense was out of the window. If you really loved your wife, this whole thing would not have happened, or at least you wouldn't have considered divorce without regarding her feelings and her situation whatsoever. Does your friend even want to marry you? Having a baby and co-parenting is one thing. Marrying someone you like, but not love, another. On the other hand, you don't seem to take marriage vows seriously, even when you claim to love someone. So, I guess it doesn't matter, and your friend knows what she's getting into, since you used your marital home to cheat.